allow yourself to explore what it is about art that you enjoy, and to sort of experiment with the different types of disciplines and mediums, because there's lots of lovely crossover. So people aren't just painters or sculptors or digital artists. Today they like to do all of the things. So I know it sounds really silly, but art making is all about exploration. So make sure that that's at the forefront of allowing yourself to figure out what your voice is as an artist.
Kia ora te whānau and welcome to the Big Ideas Learning Network. Today I'm joined by Māori artist, museum curator and Māori art advocate Nigel Borell. Kia ora brother and welcome. How are you?
Morena, thank you. I'm good. Good to be with you.
And awesome to have you here. I know you're a very, very busy person, but let's rewind the clock back and take us back to roughly when your artistic journey began or when you thought it began. Take us back to that place, brother.
Oh man, that's quite a fair way back. But I suppose for me, my first recollections of being a creator or thinking that art was my thing was being quite young, and it was those opportunities to make, and you sort of realize actually I enjoy this, and I would have been probably 8. And I remember it was those, sounds silly, but it was making little figures out of, not Play-Doh, but the plasticine stuff you used to buy. And that and drawing were the first little things that sort of got me hooked on making and creating. And I suppose it just became that sort of conversation I could have with myself that was just my own, I suppose. And it wasn't until, I suppose, when I get to high school that I realised we were told we have to sort of start being prompted about thinking about what sort of who we want to be and what type of career do we want. That art was still the thing that was quite central to how I saw myself, or wanted to see myself.
The big life questions being asked at such a young age, when someone throws that pata to you, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? It's like, man, I just want to play with this Play-Doh or whatever you call it. What was that like?
Well, I think when you get to high school, you're doing so much growing, to be honest. And then there's all these expectations around, not expectations, but these pathways that have sort of been put forward to you or prompted to you to think about. And so, it's an interesting time along with what your own personal growth that's going on at that time. So I don't know if you always know what you want to do growing up. And, I feel art and English were the two things that I sort of had some confidence or excelled in. And it's probably because I enjoyed them. When I think back on it, it wasn't because there was some sort of secret key or code that I'd sort of tapped. If anything, the code was just the fact I enjoyed them. And so it stands to reason that those were the things that I started to form and shape my career around. Yeah.
To have that, it's a gift, to know what you want to do at such a young age. But for other artists out there, it can be one of those things where maybe some people are a bit whakamā when someone asks them at a young age, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, I want to be a painter, I want to be an artist. It's kind of like, it's just easier to say, I want to be a plumber or I want to be a doctor. How did you find that? I mean, you had the confidence, but for other artists out there who might be like, do I really want to tell them what I really want to do?
Yeah, no, I think you did right. I think growing up, I didn't even know, I wouldn't even say the word artist because not until I was well into my 20s, because I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know what that meant as a career or as a pathway. But I suppose a little bit like that growing up, my dad said, why don't you, because I used to like mucking around with things, and I could often, not always, I could fix them. And so he thought that meant, you should maybe think about being a sparky, an electrician. And I was like, nah. So I suppose one of the things is like you start to eliminate the things that you want to do or not do by the things that you are definitely not interested in doing. So, that sort of process of elimination sort of helps tell you what it is that you are looking to do or destined to do, or just helps eliminate the noise. Because there's lots of noise growing up about what you should do and who you should be. And most definitely, like you say, the visual arts or the creative sector back in the early 90s was just there was very, very conventional pathways. So you could do graphic design, you could do fine arts training, and there was not really, or applied arts at tertiary level, but there wasn't much sort of the options were very distinct. So I think creative practice today is a much more dynamic offer that sort of we know today sort of traverses all pathways, and creative practice is sort of today is appreciated as problem solving adversity. So yeah, it seems to be have a much bigger appreciation and broader reach today. But growing up, it was very much like there's distinct roles or pathways that you can choose, and I suppose art was still the thing that I was interested in. Yeah.
You came from that path where you went and done tertiary study. You've got a Master of Fine Arts, and you went to
Yeah.
Elam School of Fine Arts as well. So you've done that side of the coin, but then the other side, I guess, there's those artists out there who haven't done that formal training.
Yeah.
You mentioned it's much more dynamic now. What is it like
Yeah.
now? From all your experience, now you can look back with confidence. But what's it like now if you're growing up as an artist in today's world, trying to make a living from it?
Yeah. I think today I suppose after doing my art training, I realized that because I still even in 2002 when I graduated with my master's in fine arts from Elam, I still had the perception that there were only distinct tracks that you could take that down. And it wasn't until I graduated and started doing contract work, that I realized that a fine arts degree actually went into a range of areas, from policy, advisory stuff, right through to teaching, practicing artist, writing, curating. It was quite rich. So, today it's. I mean, I think sometimes partly when you're starting out, you're still sort of thinking about yourself in relation to your career trajectory. And so sometimes you can't sort of see the broad nature of what your creative pathway could look like when you're still trying to shape an understanding of it. But for me today, I can look back and sort of see that my arts training was the dynamic core to doing lots of different creative pursuits or different roles and different job vacations that I never thought would stem from a fine arts degree. But also just thinking back on that question, because when I was going through high school, I only passed two subjects, which were art and English. And so if you had to pass three subjects to do your sixth form year. And they said, "Oh, you're gonna have to repeat your fifth form year because you only passed two subjects, art and English." And I said, "But I only want to do the art subjects in sixth form, so surely it doesn't matter." And they said, "No, you have to do this." So that prompted me to leave school at the end of my fifth form year, and I sort of did it the hard way, and I ended up doing access courses and Maxess courses, as they were called then. So they were basically paid vacational work. I did a short course at Whaiora Marae in calligraphy and ticket writing, which is the old style way of writing up signs for window display and for sandwich boards. It's not really practice anymore because vinyl and digital has taken over that practice. But needless to say, I just left school early and started to forge my own understanding of creating a pathway in the arts, and naively sort of not realizing till I was in it that you actually needed those tickets at that time. So your sixth form bursary entry and so forth to actually get into those areas of study.
Yeah, because
So it
like
was,
at that point to leave school, you have to have like some big kahunas, right? Because you think of some students today, it's like, oh, stay in school, don't go. But you're at 16, they said you need three subjects. You said, nah, I'm going out, I'm leaving, I'm going to go and do the study. Like, where did that confidence or tenacity or audacity, I should say, come
yeah,
from to be able to make that decision at such a young age to leave and go and pursue this potential at that stage career in arts?
I don't know. I feel like there's a healthy dose of naivety in all of that too. because you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes your naivety is your best weapon, because if you did know, you probably wouldn't even contemplate some of that stuff. So there's a healthy dose of that in there. But I have a twin sister who, we've our trajectory is very similar because we've gone through the same education system at the same time. However, she was academic and bright and excelled in those types of conventional educational subjects. And in a sense, I didn't. And the world that I was interested in sort of wasn't, which was a visual arts world, really wasn't rewarded through our education system quite the way that someone who likes science or maths or excels in those conventional ways of academia is supported. So she was also surprised when I left school quite young, and my parents were, but also my mother was sort of, her next question was, okay, so what are you going to do? She wasn't so worried that I was leaving early. It was more what you needed to have a plan. And so she was a big supporter and prompter of thinking into the space of, if you're going to leave, come up with a plan type thing. And my idea was, if you're going to leave school, then go get a job. That was the very conventional trajectory, even that he followed growing up. To earn a wage type thing is a very honourable outcome if you're going to forego your education. But for me, it was really just not wanting to repeat fifth form, but also thinking I could explore other avenues to do my thing. And once I did get out in the wide world, I did lots of growing up because I was quite young, and I started doing an access course in graphic design at ATI, or AUT as it's called today. And so commuting from Manurewa on the bus at that time was quite an eye-opener for a young 16, 17-year-old.
Yeah. And you're going from Manurewa in the deep south, and you're heading to AUT. Is that still at the CBD at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, that's quite, you go through quite a lot of demographics on that train ride, don't you? As you approach Remuera, Newmarket. What was that like as a young person, knowing, okay, I've made this decision, I've got to kind of go through with this as a young boy from the south side?
It was an eye-opener, to be honest, because socially you're sort of mixing, it's just a big growing up phase, and I actually didn't mind that part. I quite liked that I was doing something that everyone else wasn't. Because I've always seen myself, I think most artists do, as a bit of an outsider, because you're creating your own worlds often when you're making and imagining in your art practice. So often, it's a very introverted practice anyway. So for me, I didn't mind the fact that I was sort of forging out my own journey and figuring it out. But I also it was an eye-opener, sort of commuting into the city, just interacting with the public in a way that you just don't do at high school. So that was an eye-opener, but also refreshing. And then the people who I was studying with were often 3 to 4 years older than me, or they had taken, because these access courses were paid tuition for 6 months. They had taken a break from their university study, some of them, to do this and then go back into study. So it was a real eye opener, just the demographic of student that I was mixing with. Often, I think I was the youngest in the room. But yeah, I enjoyed that, and I actually ended up having friends that were older than me. Was part of just how I ended up creating my own social groups, or connecting with social groups.
And it's such a crucial point in your life where you're making that transition out of secondary school to whatever it might be, tertiary study, workforce, whatever. You're mixing with adult people, or mixing with adults. What advice would you give at that stage for other artists? Because they are forging their own path, right? It's often there is no predetermined path for them. They're having to do things on their own accord. But it's it's a crazy time, right? But what advice would you give to those artists at that stage looking to forge their own path about having the confidence to do so?
I think to trust their voice, the things that they want to say or do, and to listen to that, but also to enjoy their practice, and whatever that might be at that time. It's just because that's why we make art, is because we find it enjoyable, or it sustains a part of us, and allows us to express who we are in ways that we feel are safe and um, uh, are authentic to us. So, those things don't change no matter if you're starting out or whether you're a senior career artist. That sort of reward and satisfaction remains. But I would also tell someone who's starting out to not put too many labels on yourself. I think um, allow yourself to explore what it is about art that you enjoy, and to sort of experiment with the different types of disciplines and mediums, because there's lots of lovely crossover. So people aren't just painters or sculptors or digital artists. Today they like to do all of the things. And when I was growing up, you were often sort of a little bit like the education system. You were often asked to choose one of those art disciplines and specialize. But I see today that people like the whole texture of doing everything, and so I think it's fine to sort of just figure out what it is that you're interested in doing and allow yourself the chance to explore that into play. I know it sounds really silly, but art making is all about exploration. So make sure that that's at the forefront of allowing yourself to figure out what your voice is as an artist.
There is a lot of trial and error, isn't there? I mean, there would have been times in your artistic journey where you felt, or maybe questioned, like, man, this is really hard, or this isn't what I thought it would be. Were there times like that? And if so, like, how did you get yourself out of that? Because you're here now as a successful artist, but I'm sure it wasn't all roses when you were
Yeah,
that 16-year-old boy on the train from Marurewa.
yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose definitely the 16-year-old doing those courses for the first time I was just holding on for dear life and figuring out, making sure that I was sticking to actually completing the course. You know what I mean? Those are enough of a challenge at that age. Was just actually seeing things through, and then allowing myself to sort of. You do a lot of reflecting, so it's not till the course is finished. I find that you do a lot of reflecting on the parts that you liked, the parts that you'd like to carry on with, the parts that you definitely know you don't want to do or that you're not interested in, and then perhaps some of the things that you find challenging around having to be in that space. And sometimes it's actually the writing part, or it might be a particular part of those practices that that you need to put more attention into. So I think reflecting on those times, just getting through them for a start, and then reflecting on them, and making sure you sort of make incremental measures to help yourself achieve better in the next iteration, or to navigate that challenge better next time is probably one of those key things. Yeah.
Can you pinpoint a moment looking back on your career where you had serious self-doubt, or you thought, man, I don't know if I've made the right decision? Get me out.
No, I never have.
Like
I've never
pulling off the
had.
band-aid,
No,
eh?
I've never had that major sort of like I need the lifeboat moment, because I think I've sort of by that stage, I had well and truly understood that an artistic journey was where I was at. Um, and to be honest, I've done a range of different things in that journey. I've done screen printing and fabric design. I've done conventional painting. I've done installation art and a bit of graphic design. So I knew that was my thing. That was my thing. So I think my sort of hit the wall moments were ones while I was in the study and trying to sort of stay afloat. It wasn't so much. It wasn't so much the big 360 on anything. It was more just the speed bumps sometimes can be quite hefty. So I remember in my first year when I went to do my fine arts degree training at Massey University in Palmerston North. I naively I enrolled for too many papers that first year, and I sort of hit the brick wall in the second semester, and I had to I got a provisional pass in a museum studies paper, which I was really grateful for because I did not hand in two assignments and I was just like, I can't do this. I've calibrated my semester with way too much papers. But that would have been a tricky time. But again, it's funny because like as long as you're enjoying the subject, everything sort of renews itself, or eventually sort of sorts itself out. And that's how I felt about art because we often talk about art as a rongoa or as a form of well-being and healing. But I can recognize even back then when I was in those tricky times that my art practice or checking in with myself through my art practice was the way through resolving any of those major adversities. Yeah.
It's powerful. It's not just a physical aspect of artistry, but a mental well-being, and feeling it in your wider as well. Is
Yeah.
that something you've always been conscious of? Has it grown stronger over time as you've gotten older?
Yeah, it's grown stronger. I think it's always been there. I haven't been able to, growing up, didn't know how to explain it or understand it, or harness it for that matter. But, I left school, did those courses at AUT, and then I worked on my first meeting house, at James Cook High School in Maunirua. And that was a huge turning point in my sort of understanding of being an artist, and thinking about my trajectory as an artist or in the art pathway. Um, and meeting houses, I'm not a carver, I'm a painter and a mural artist, and so those were the parts I did in the meeting house, the kōwhaiwhai and the murals and the tukutuku panels. Um, those projects take typically 2 years to do, so it was the biggest project I'd worked on at that moment in time. And then I worked on 3 other meeting houses under Tōhunga Whakairo Paki Harrison after that. So that was a huge moment that sort of shaped my career and really consolidated my pathway as a Māori artist as well. But it was the wider nature of working on meeting houses and engaging with customary Māori art really kicked in at that time, in a really profound way. So, I went from sort of being cognizant of having this taha wairua element to what we do as artists to being really very conscientious of it by the end of working on those meeting houses, to the point today where it's just part and parcel of checking in with myself as an artist, which is pretty cool.
Love it, brother. All right, let's get into some quick fire questions here. So just something that popped up. Firstly, what are the different ways have you got in revenue, like making a living as an artist? What are your revenue streams?
Well, I suppose being a practicing artist is the conventional one, so selling your work. Early on, when I had finished my master's at Elam, I signed up to a dealer gallery. So I trialed being in a dealer gallery, and at that stage, it's a very conventional, what's the word? Not economic, but financial sort of transaction, whereby you create the work, they take a certain percentage, and they let you know what sells, and sometimes they want to influence what your next series is because the color blue, your blue series sold really well, do you want to do some more blue works type thing? So the conventional avenue of selling your work is one, although I would never go back into a dealer in that scenario. I like my autonomy as an artist and how I want to carve out my practice today.
Well, that's why you do it in the first place, right?
Yeah,
To become an artist, because
yeah,
you are that.
exactly.
It's the self-direction. It's finding your own path,
Yeah.
and it's
And some people, dealer galleries work well for them. So it's different strokes for different folks in terms of what works for you and what's important to that person. But definitely selling your work. I think most artists I know have a day job or a full-time job, which is their bread and butter. So for me, curating and being a curator at the Auckland Museum is my day job. And most of my colleagues are either teachers or they are involved in curating or art in some way, shape, or form. So that really, I suppose, is their baseline financial bread and butter. I think the other thing, I think it's just so broad. I mean, I've done work for different councils in terms of Māori art advocacy and policy work. Writing and curating has been work that has brought in income. So a little bit like the different avenues that a fine arts degree takes you in, I've been surprised in the different contract and job offers that have come through that as well. For me, at this moment in my career, with a strong profile, that's sort of increased even more in terms of people's interest in offering me to work on things, so forth. So I think it's quite broad, and I think it's got everything from the conventional, which is selling your work, right through to the advocacy and the advisory work, which might take people by surprise, but don't be surprised when they ask you to do some of that stuff. It's a measure of how you're doing and where they see your worth and your value.
Awesome, Hill. What planning do you do, and what helps you stay on track? You digital, pen and paper? How does Nigel stay on track?
I am hideously old school, so it's pen and paper. And then I work with people to digitize stuff if it's a logo or graphic design material. Or I will work collaboratively directly with the graphic designer. So sometimes we will shape it through conversation and collaboration that way. But largely I'm a hands-on maker, so I'm old school like that. I don't really do digital. Probably showing my age and era, but I actually really enjoy the hand being involved in how we create, and I like it when things aren't perfect. I think, when design work has sort of slight flaws, or you can actually see the hand has made that, to me is still really important. And is a lot rarer now because we have such an obsession with exactness, and technology and digital allows us to do that we start to miss the trace of the human experience or interaction in that stuff. So I'm still pretty old school, painting, making, installation art, drawing, using my hands.
Awesome. And what does your planning look like? Do you like to schedule everything out? Do you have a week sort of in advance, you know what you're doing, or you kind of like day by day, take it as it comes?
No, I think I think I do a lot of. It sits in my head a lot. So you might be asked to, okay, can you please write me something for June, and they might ask you in May, and the deadline is like end of June, and I spend a lot of the time. I'd probably spend right up until the first week of June thinking about it. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of processing we do, and people think sometimes that the outcome is working on it, but the outcome is really just the final step of a whole lot of thinking that you do. So I find myself that I do a lot of processing of ideas before I'm actually touching the paper or touching the keyboard to produce those words or that thinking. And I suppose that sounds a bit odd to people, but a lot of the groundwork's happening in your head, or you're sort of digesting or sieving through, navigating ideas and deciding on what ones you need to really hone in on or present or highlight. So and I actually, all people work differently, but I actually enjoy the white hot, nature of a deadline. That sort of motivates me.
And fire underneath the bottom.
I get that sense of clarity real quick. And sometimes you need that when you've got buzzy ideas in your head. It helps eliminate the ones that aren't going to hit the ground. Yeah.
Nice. Imposter syndrome. Have you experienced it? And if so, how do you motivate and reassure yourself to keep going?
Yeah, it's interesting. Imposter syndrome. Yeah, a lot. I feel it a lot still, and I think it's really healthy now. When I think about it now, it is a little bit like when you get up to give a whakaore or to give a speech, and if you are not nervous, then you're doing something wrong or something's not right. If you're too confident, then that's when you're going to make mistakes. So I feel like imposter syndrome's a little bit like that to me. It's a little bit like it's that little reminder to be vigilant and to sort of be have your feet on the ground and to be grateful, and not to get too ahead of yourself. That's how I view it today. But I think imposter syndrome sort of works in different ways, depending on where you are in your career. It can sort of be a really loud voice when you're young because you're really still trying to figure things out, and this imposter syndrome is sort of taken over. But the older you get and the more you get to understand yourself and how you work, it becomes your buddy to sort of just keep you in check as opposed to dictate. So I don't know. Imposter syndrome, it's an interesting one. I think, yeah, it's a friend. It's a friend more than anything these days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Very good way to put it. What advice would you give to other aspiring artists just starting out on their creative path? Would you be like, nah, don't do it, it's not worth it? But probably not, hopefully not. But yeah, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, not to be too hard on themselves. I feel like today we live in a society where everything is instant, and whether that's gratification for a project or an idea, or whether that's the acquiring of something. We live in a very instant society where things have to happen at lightning speed, and I feel that sort of culture and rhetoric also transfers into people's expectations of themselves to be something. And I would say to those people starting out, just to allow yourself to experience or range of opportunities within the arts, and not to be too ready to analyze it, but just be in it and experience it. When you're starting out, it's all about creating, a wealth of knowledge and experiences that will put you in good stead to build the next experience or the next layer of your career upon. So the richer that experience is, the richer you're going to have to draw on for your next stage. So I would encourage them to be open to a range of experiences without putting labels on what they need to achieve just yet, but be present and just keep building up your kitty of knowledge around those different disciplines that you're interested in. And before you know it, you're going to be turning around and you're going to be 20 years down your career and you'll have all of this experience behind you, or 5 years, whatever that length is. For me, I turned around and it was 20 years, but before long, you're going to draw on that stuff. There's information that I was given or garnered early on in my career that I still draw on today, and I don't think that's going to ever change throughout my life. You're going to be constantly reflecting on your learnings and the things that you've learned across your career.
What was that for you, Nigel? That when you look back, that piece of advice or that stood out for you, that's still with you today?
I think it was one of the key ones was just being comfortable in my own skin, and I think I don't know. I just felt like I was often trying to figure out what my voice was in the arts growing up, and I don't know if this is imposter syndrome or not, but the idea that I was still just trying to feel comfortable and settled in that, and I feel that that's something that has sort of changed for me. Is that at a point now where I've done some large projects that sort of help sort of demarcate quite clearly what I've done, and sometimes those are really helpful just to sort of to give you some idea of the breadth of where those things lie or what you've done. So yeah, I think just reflecting back on it's been, and constantly reflecting back on it's been useful.
Love it, love it, love it. Lastly, what has been one of your aha moments, like when you realised that the grind has paid off. That the bus, the train trip in, the being a student, not knowing if you're going to pass or not. When did you realize that all that work had paid off?
I think when I worked on my first meeting house, to be honest, that was a huge moment for me. And I mean, I was 19 when I started it and 21 when I finished. And granted, it was still just a small project, but it was the beginnings of a whole avenue of an art career that really took off after that. But I felt quite settled after that. You know, I sort of thought I knew this is the path for me after that first meeting house. And then I suppose when I went to varsity and I got my in my final year of my four-year arts degree, I got 3 art scholarships, and I was like, wow. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is
Must be doing something right.
yeah. And I never thought, I never thought that I was an academically inclined person, because I had I was always judging myself on what my twin was achieving in that realm.
Yeah.
And that probably wasn't a healthy thing for me to do. But that was an aha moment that I can excel in the academia stuff. And then I think the last aha moment was curating Toi Tu Toi Ora, the large contemporary Māori art exhibition, where sometimes with our projects and our creative thinking, we have these little seeds that we sow in our heads of something that we want to do. But seeing it come to fruition like that project did, as it did, was something. It was something I didn't think we would ever achieve quite to that degree. So that was really an aha moment for me as well. Yeah. And the aha moment right now is reinstating my career as an artist and making sure that I'm feeding my creative practice as much as I'm feeding all those other demands on my time and my career, whether it's curating and writing or advocacy. They all have to now be balanced with my art practice. Yeah.
Thank you, brother, for your advocacy on this kōrero and this kaupapa. Really appreciate your time.
Kia ora.